let's talk about what somebody can do. We already got into the light piece. We're going to dim our light at night when we're in that last half hour before we go to sleep. But let's get into other things we can do to that sleep environment to enhance sleep.
And of course, this has been one of the great problems during lockdown, because bedrooms were turned into offices. And so you could never separate the working environment physically from the sleeping environment. And so the bedroom and the bed need to be havens of sleep. And the trouble is, again, it's an economic issue. Many of us are lucky enough to have, a bedroom, and it's not combined with anything else. So that's the first tricky point. So the bedroom itself shouldn't be too warm. Part of going to sleep is a subtle drop in core body temperature. It's only about a degree, but it's really important to experience. And if the bedroom is too hot, then it's more difficult to lose that core body temperature and then get to sleep. This is a real problem for partners in the same bed. They may have different temperature demands. I remember talking to a couple in Australia, in the mining district in the Pilbara, on the northwest of extraordinary continent, and they said, "Oh, it's just terrible. What saved our marriage was a cooling device. I won't name the company. A cooling device on one side of the bed, so one partner was cooler than the other." So temperature is important. Again, problems. It's another issue of poverty. Keep it quiet. If it's not quiet, many student dorms, many students use white noise generator or the sound of the sea or something just to block out some of the noise. Keep it dark, particularly during the summer with very early mornings. You can 4 o'clock light, so try and keep the light out until you actually need to see it. It's not a contradiction from what I was saying as the photon shower first thing in the morning. If it's too early, it can make you get up too early. You've got to get the balance right. Remove, where possible, your TV, your computers, your smartphones, and all the rest of it. If it is also your bedroom, your workroom, your office, then try and just wheel it next door. I know it's complicated, but try and physically isolate the spaces. Smartphones are terribly difficult because, people are checking emails, they're doing social media, they're looking on the news reports, all this sort of stuff. And this acts as an incredible alerting effect on the brain. So be strong. Use, put the smartphone outside. Don't clock watch. This is, again, a really important point. So many of us have those clocks with an illuminated dial. And we'll talk about waking up in the middle of the night in a moment. But if you wake up in the middle of the night and you become conscious that you've woken up, the first thing that many of us will do is look at the illuminated dial. And then you think, oh my God, I've only got 2 hours before the alarm clock goes off. Oh, God, I think you get all stressed and anxious, and you never get back to sleep. So cover the dial. It's when the alarm goes off that's the critical point, not how long before it goes off. And even an extra 15 minutes or half an hour is good for you to have that extra bit of sleep. Don't take sleep apps too seriously. None of them have been endorsed by the sleep federations. None of them are FDA approved. They can be deeply misleading. So they can tell you you've had a wonderful night of sleep or a terrible night of sleep, or you've had lots of slow wave. They aren't accurate enough to do that. What they're useful for is telling you roughly when you went to sleep, how many times you woke up, and when you woke up finally in the morning. And that could be useful because you can change your behavior, like losing weight. You change your eating behavior, you weigh yourself in the morning, you see, oh, I've lost a bit of weight. That reinforces the changed eating behavior. And of course, the same can be true for a sleep app. They're not, I'm very down on them because they're overcomplicated, they can be misleading. But the fundamental measurement of a rest activity cycle can be quite useful. But I'm down on them because, when I've given public talks, I had one chap come up to me and say, I'm really worried I'm not getting enough slow wave sleep. And I said, well, how do you know? And he said, well, my app is telling me. And I said, okay, well, first of all, we don't really know what slow wave sleep is all about. And I don't think there's any need to particularly worry about it if you're getting the sleep that you need. He said, no, I know I'm not getting enough. So what I do is I set the alarm clock for 3 a.m. to check how much slow wave sleep I've recorded on my app. I mean, that raises another really important point, because now we've gone from regarding sleep as a luxury in the 80s, and I've done another all-nighter. Oh, congratulations! Thinking it's this sort of sleep is for wimps. To what? 40 years later, thinking that, my God, if I don't get the right sort of sleep, I'm going to die. I spoke to another person who came up to me and said, I don't get 8 hours of sleep. Am I going to die? And I said, well, yeah, you're going to die, but it may have nothing to do with the fact that you're not getting 8 hours of sleep. So there's a new condition called sleep anxiety, and people get frightened about not falling asleep or waking up, and that actually affects their sleep. So it's just chill, relax about it. I mean, sleep is variable. It will be variable. Don't get worried about it. So we've touched on this. The bed, when you're in bed, keep a routine on free nights, free days and work days. I think the Brits, I don't know about you guys, are a little bit cheap with their bedding. And I don't know, maybe perhaps it's my generation. And, you have to remember that 30% of our lives will be spent in bed, approximately. So it's worth investing in a mattress that is comfortable, lovely pillows, a good duvet, and something that you just enjoy being in, rather than you feel, oh, well, I've just got to use this sort of block of wood to sleep on. So I think it's worth investing in good bedding, good bed, and all the rest of it.
Before you move on, I want to touch on something within that piece.
Yeah.
Is there any science showing us that different firmness of mattresses are better than others?
There's not a great deal of really good research, but there is some research suggesting that those mattresses that take heat away from the body, people get better sleep than a conventional mattress. So there is a little bit, but we need a lot more. And of course, there's going to be lots of individual variation. So it's going to be a very hard study to undertake. But so the mattresses that take heat away, which makes sense, because if you build up heat overnight, then that can actually wake you up. If you can wake up too hot.
And what about sleep position? Is there an ideal? Should we be trying to sleep on our stomachs, our backs, sides?
I think you just do what works. And of course, for some people, there may be a health issue, bad back, or some other physical problem. And that can really impede sleep enormously. We'll come on to, we might as well discuss it now, which is obstructive sleep apnea, which is you tend to have more frequently in men and heavier men, but women get it as well, and thin men get it. And it's a collapse of the musculature of the throat and the neck, which then impedes the airway. In fact, interestingly, and I found out about this fairly recently, it's a bit sad, but as we get older, we deposit fat in our tongues. Our tongues become fatter, and that can flip back and produce this blocked airway. And you know it in a partner, because they're almost certainly going to be snoring, and then you'll have silence while they stop breathing. And then there'll be a great gasp as the brain wakes them up, because it realizes it's being deprived of oxygen. And the really dangerous thing about that, of course, is that you get these great surges in blood pressure, which can be bad if you've got coronary heart issues. There's a higher frequency of stroke with obstructive sleep apnea, but also if you have diabetes too, your small blood vessels in the eye are more vulnerable to damage with big surges in blood pressure. So what do we do about a snoring partner that doesn't have sleep apnea? If they've got sleep apnea, then CPAP, which is these masks with air, work for more than 90% of individuals. It might take a bit of getting used to, but do that always in preference to surgery or any other interventions. It genuinely works. John Stradling, who is the professor of respiratory sleep medicine in Oxford, he's retired now, but he's done a lot of work in this area, and he's absolutely convinced that the first attack is CPAP, and find a mask that works. So it can be sorted. What happens if you can't stand your partner snoring? And this is a problem for many, many individuals, particularly, again, more elderly couples. And my advice is straightforward. If you can, sleep in a different room. And many people feel that, oh my goodness, this is the end of my marriage. If we're not sleeping in the same bed. I say, of course it's not. It just means you're both going to get better night's sleep. You're going to be more empathetic the next day. You're going to enjoy each other's company more. You're going to have a greater sense of humor. It should not be stigmatized. So if you can, sleep in a different room.
I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to jump in and ask about that because it has become a societal norm that couples do sleep in the same bed. And, taking a quick look at that situation, it seems like there's, one big positive and maybe, a couple other ones, but there's so many negatives that could occur from being that close throughout the night.
Yeah. In fact, a young lad came up to me after a public talk, and I sort of mentioned this. He said, how old do you have to be before you can sleep in separate beds? Which was hilarious. But, it's stigmatized. It shouldn't be. I mean, the priority should be getting a good night's sleep. It does not reflect at all on the quality of your relationship. In fact, your relationship will be improved because you'll sleep better and then you'll feel better. Yeah.
Such a good point.
So what else? What have we got? We've talked about the bed. We've talked about keeping the bedside lights low. We talked about earplugs or not. Oh, one thing that I hear people talk to me about a lot, and the scientific basis for this is not great, but defining the sleeping space, the bedroom, with a particular smell, lavender, whatever. It may be your partner's perfume or aftershave. And so that when you're going into that space, that smell is associated with sleep. And so it helps define the sleeping space. And in fact, people have told me that if they travel a lot and they go to hotels and stuff, they will take a small amount of their partner's perfume or aftershave or lavender, depending on how they define their sleeping space, put it in the hotel, and it helps them get to sleep. Now, it could be what the mechanisms are unclear. It could be simply a placebo effect, but I can see psychologically it will help define the sleeping space. So in theory, it could make sleep more easier. And the final thing I'd like to say, sorry, and I'm going on, is that waking up in the middle of the night. So people get very anxious about this. We're told the perfect sleep is 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep. Well, it's just nonsense. It may be on the average, but in fact, sleep historically, pre-industrial, was, and Roger Eckert has done some beautiful work on this, looking at historical records, showing that human sleep was either biphasic, go to sleep, wake up, interact at some level, go back to sleep again, wake up, go back to sleep, or polyphasic with a series of wake-ups and going back to sleep again. People don't know that's the natural state, and that humans are like all other mammals and have that kind of interrupted sleep pattern. So again, what happens is people wake up, they think, oh my God, I'm never going to get back to sleep. I better start doing my emails and drinking coffee. And of course, it's the anxiety. And it raises another point, which is that most people don't have a sleeping problem. They have a stress or an anxiety problem, which prevents them either getting to sleep in the first place or getting back to sleep if they've woken up. So stress management and relaxation techniques are incredibly important in helping individuals get better sleep.
If you enjoyed that clip, press here for the full episode. I'll see you over there.
So the shorthand for melatonin that you read all the time is that it's a sleep hormone, and it most emphatically is not. But what does caffeine do? Well, it blocks adenosine receptors within the brain, so it masks